Hello, and thank you for joining us on Living the Dream, Episode 1 with Sandra Robbie. I'm Sandra Robbie, and this series is going to be all about our efforts to finally see Mendez versus Westminster, the Orange County School desegregation case that took place in 1947 and helped to pave the way to Brown versus Board of Education. We want to see this story taught in all of our schools and become part of the national discussion on American civil rights history by the 75-year anniversary in 2021-2022. This series was going to take us through the next 3 years as we work to see this dream come true by the 75-year anniversary of Mendez versus Westminster. And I'm going to share with you some of the change models that I'm using as we're working through this process. I'm going to talk to change agents to find out how they have successfully brought their projects and ideas into the communities. And I want to hear from you to get your ideas on what we can do to make this a true national celebration for people of all colors to understand fully and finally that we are one, and that it takes all of us every day to work together to make this happen, and that we can do this. All right, so the name of this series is called Living the Dream with Sandra Robbie. We're in episode 1, and you can reach me by leaving a message at the bottom of this YouTube channel, or you can email me directly at sandra.robbie@yahoo.com, sandra.robbie@yahoo.com. So this series, the title is inspired, of course, by Dr. Martin Luther King and his dream. And from his speech in the March on Washington, a portion of his important words reach out to us like this. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. And when this happens, and when we all allow freedom to ring, and let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, Black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. I have a dream too, and these are my words. To help achieve Dr. King's great dream, it is my dream that our nation study and celebrate the history of Mendez versus Westminster. So I talked a little bit about that, but let's talk a little bit more about what that is. And what is Mendez versus Westminster? Well, one day soon, I hope Mendez will be an answer on Jeopardy. And I don't want it to be one of those answers where people don't buzz in. I want everybody buzzing in and saying they know the answers to what this is about, because it is that important. So Mendez versus Westminster is the 1947 Orange County civil rights case that took place during World War II and the Japanese internment. Mendez made California the first state in the nation to end school segregation, and it helped to pave the way to Brown versus Board of Education. So Mendez took place during World War II and the Japanese internment. In fact, the Mendez family moved to Westminster to lease land from a Japanese family, the Munamitsus, who were being sent to an internment camp in Poston, Arizona. I mean, this story blows the walls down to reveal the truth that the American civil rights struggle is about all of us, every day. And surprise, Thurgood Marshall and Earl Warren were both involved in Mendez and the Brown cases. And this is shocking, right? We should know this, right? And that's been my dream. See, I learned about Mendez versus Westminster about almost 20 years ago. I grew up in Westminster, W for Westminster, California. And those of you who aren't familiar, Mendez versus Westminster, Mendez is just inland from Huntington Beach, about 20 minutes from Disneyland. And I learned about Mendez when I was sitting at my mom's kitchen table reading a news article that was talking about a school that was going to be built named in honor of the Mendez family. Now, this was a moment that just blew my mind. I could feel the kitchen walls spinning as they're talking about not just segregated schools, but swimming pools, movie theaters, all those things that our history books told us happened only in the American South, happened all across the Southwest to groups of all colors, Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans. And Mendez helped to end segregation in California and pave the way to Brown. So when I learned about Mendez, when I looked up from the newspaper that day, I felt I was angry, I felt deceived, I felt lied to, I felt that everything I had learned was false, and that it was important that all of us learn the truth, that we are all connected and that all of our voices matter and that we can do this together, we can make a difference. So I ended up going back to school, took some TV production classes at our local community college, got some great support from folks like Warren Carter at Golden West College and Maria Hall Brown and Ed Miskovich with our PBS station KOC at that time. I became the world's oldest intern, did a documentary on Mendez that helped to get the ball rolling so that we could get this story told, because one of the life truths that became apparent to me was something I learned from my undergraduate in a class in social movements from UC Santa Barbara with Professor Dick Flax. And I remember vividly when he said, "My students don't like to hear this, but you need to know that history takes time." And I didn't want history to take time. I wanted change to happen now. But when I learned about Mendez, I understood intrinsically that history does take time. That if I want Mendez taught in our schools, this is going to be a 20, 25-year plan. So we are in year 16 of the 20, 25-year plan. And I want to share with all of our communities and people who are hoping to make change in the future some of the change models that I have used to help to keep the hope alive in my heart, and that helped me to see that we can do this, that it may take a long time, but that's essential to build the strong foundations and the community support to make institutional change possible. So since doing my documentary that ended up winning an Emmy, we have been to the White House. We have had White House honors. So Sylvia Mendez received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama. We've been to Harvard, Stanford, the University of Michigan. We got a U.S. postage stamp, got to meet Ricky Martin. You know, it's been a lot of fun. But all of these have been in the effort to get affirmations so that we can help to get this story taught in our schools and celebrated across our countries. And so we are getting ready to take this over the top. And so I want to share with you some of those change models that we're going to be using, especially as we go forward in the next steps. So I am working with Kotter's 8-step change model. You can look more about this on www.kotter.com. And I learned about Kotter's 8-step change model as I was studying my master's in organizational leadership, which is about change in individuals, groups, and organizations. So we're going to go through the first 4 steps today, and we'll go through the 4 steps in our next meeting, and we're going to talk about all different kinds of change models, and we'll talk to different people who are leading change in our communities to talk about the efforts and the challenges they face and how they work around them. And I want to hear your ideas about what we can do to take Mendez to the next level. So step number 1 in Kotter's change model, you have to create a sense of urgency. So once you learn that something needs to be changed, you have to give people a reason why it has to change now, not tomorrow, not in a year, but right now. You got to get people to make the commitment to make a move to do something today. So for Mendez versus Westminster, the urgency that I have is that the 75-year anniversary is coming up in 2021, 2022. So we've got 2 short years to help to get Mendez into our national awareness, to start this party and get it blazing all across the country. So that's the goal that I have. I want to see this celebrated all across the country by 2021, 2022. And why do I want it changed? Because Mendez versus Westminster finally, 60 years after Brown versus Board of Education desegregated our schools, the study of Mendez versus Westminster can desegregate the way we talk about American civil rights history. It blows the walls down to show how we are all connected. And we need a story that tells us that we can do this together, because one of the hard life truths is that the stories we tell us who we are and who we can be. And when we don't see stories of people of all colors working together to make a difference, we don't think it's possible. Well, Mendez blows that out of the water, and it shows people of all colors, Democrats, Republicans, Asian Americans, Native Americans, African Americans, whites, Jews, working together to see that equality is real for all of us. That's what Mendez teaches us, and we can do it again. We can do it now, and our communities need that story right now. The civil rights story is about all of us every day, and the truth is that we are one. Everybody's story connects to everybody else's story, and we need all of us to work together to recognize that the freedom you have is only possible because I make it possible for you and you make it possible for me. And we need to celebrate each other in making that dream come true. Because the truth is that court cases started with something as simple as not being served cake, not being able to sit where you want on the bus. So every day when we go to Target and we're coming home, we're putting our groceries away, everybody made that possible, from the people in the parking lot to the person that checked you out, through a common value of what American freedom means. And that is what we work toward. That is the goal. And that's why Mendez is so important. So Cotter step number 2, we have to create a vision for change. Why is it important to create a vision for change? Because if we don't see it in our human minds, we don't think it's possible. So some of the ways that we've been making that vision possible is, like I said, the stories we tell us who we are and who we can be. So we tell the story so people can create a vision of who they are and who they can be. I have to be honest, growing up, I wanted to do television, but I never saw anybody that looked like me on television, except for Ricky Ricardo, and he looked kind of like my dad when I was growing up. But other than that, I got the clear message somebody like me could not do television. So we need to share those stories that show people of all colors doing and being successful together, fulfilling different roles, playing different parts in our community, because then we believe it and we know that it can be possible. So Mendez fundamentally changes the American civil rights story to include all of us and to share that it's all of us every day and that we make history every day. While change may take time, we make history every day in the actions, interactions, and the beliefs that we put out into the world. So know that deep in your heart, you are making history every day. So our communities need Mendez now because we need hope for a future that includes all of us. And Mendez shows us how that can happen. And finally, through Mendez, once again, I cannot emphasize this enough, Mendez shows us that we are one. All of us, all of our stories, all of our freedoms require all of us to recognize that it's about all of us every single day. And we have to work hard to find ways to make American freedom truly possible for everybody. So effort number 3 in Cotter is you have to communicate the vision. So if they have the vision and the vision's up here, it doesn't do any good because you need to tell everybody so that we can start to work on that vision, so that we have a shared idea and a shared goal of what that future is that we're going to be working toward. So part of the way we've been communicating the vision for Mendez is we've been doing presentations and trainings all across the country, from Brooklyn to Beverly Hills. We've been sharing the stories, and people of all colors have been shaking me by the shoulders, saying, why don't we share the story? This is our story. This is my story. And it tells me that we can do this. So we've been trying to do presentations. We've been on the news media. We've been sharing on social media. We've been talking to friends and neighbors. I promise you, if I met you anywhere in the last 15 years, if we had 2 minutes together, I told you about Mendez, because it is that important for me to let you know that I respect and I am grateful for what you do to allow my American freedom to be. Books have been written about Mendez. We've been presenting at schools, colleges. We have an exhibit at the Museum of Tolerance. I've got a special exhibit coming up called the Us Bus. Share that with you a little bit later. And all kinds of things. We're preparing for celebrations and events, especially for the 75-year anniversary of Mendez, because that's when we're going over the top. We're going to have a party that America will cherish and want to continue over and over again. So number 4 in Cotter's change model is we have to build a powerful enough guiding coalition to make this happen. Because one of the other truths that I want folks to be aware of is that change does not happen with one person. That's a huge American myth, that it takes just one. Well, it may take one person to perhaps share an idea. It takes thousands and thousands of people to support that idea over time for it to become a reality. So to give you an example, like in Mendez versus Westminster, Mendez is a class action suit that involved 5 families and 4 school districts. And while we may discuss only the Mendez family, the truth is the Mendez family was leasing land from a Japanese family that was being sent to an internment camp during World War II. Without all of these families and all of these groups coming together, Mendez would not have been possible. The most famous school desegregation case that we talk about is the Supreme Court case Brown versus Board of Education. And a lot of school children are misled to believe that it was just one family that led that case. Well, that case welled up from generations and generations of court cases and social movements that led to this case that did not involve just one family. But if you can imagine, there were over 80 families in this class action suit from states all across the East Coast that brought Brown versus Board of Education to our Supreme Court. So please know that when you are working to make change, you need to find others that can work with you, support you, believe in your dream, and help to hold you up when the hard parts come, because that is